it just came to it where he just broke down, and he doesn't break down often, and he did. And he's like, I'm done. I'm tapped out. I was like, in my head, I'm like, what? This guy, this man with these high morals, who it's so important to him, his family and his marriage, never wanting to see us get divorced because his parents divorced at a young age, and my parents aren't, even though they have their own sets of problems, but he loves to see that they're still together after so many years. Here's this man who has all of that, and he's done.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about how to find a relationship coach, the top 3 things to look for. My guest Crystal's husband was set on getting divorced, and he meant it because then he moved out, which was heartbreaking. But even in her pain, Crystal decided to fight the good fight to save her marriage, and it worked. Today, her marriage is better than ever. She's going to share how she fixed her broken marriage so you can do it too. But first, let's talk about how to find a relationship coach. What are the top 3 things to look for? Because when you're going to trust someone with something as important as making your marriage last and thrive, it's scary. You want to make sure it's the right someone, especially if you're trying to navigate a crisis like a separation or the threat of divorce or an affair, which feels so vulnerable, so private. There's so much pressure and there's so much at stake, like your whole family's happiness and future, right? And you shouldn't have to be alone with that. You also need someone super safe to support you who won't judge you. And it's so important to me that if you're craving a relationship coach, that you get that safe, effective support, even if you're not in crisis, even if you're just feeling disappointed that your marriage just isn't what you thought your marriage was going to be. Let's make it what you signed up for, because your birthright as a woman is to feel desired, adored, and cherished. Isn't that something? That's your birthright. So I'm not giving up until you get all of that. That's how we're all going to end world divorce. So if you're not getting adored and cherished, that's so painful. And I still remember how painful. You're going to want a guide to help you see what's in the way, what's in your blind spot, what's stopping you from having that. And the best person to show you how to get that, well, that's what we're going to talk about, is the 3 things that you want your guide to have. So here's what to look for in a fairy godmother. I mean, a relationship coach. They seem like fairy godmothers once you get one. Number 1, your relationship coach doesn't have any advice. You might be wondering, how can anyone help fix your family when you've already tried everything and nothing's worked for you anyway? And also you're exhausted, especially if he's 99% of the problem, right? Well, if you're a regular listener on this podcast, then you know that the right relationship coach can help you not just save your marriage, but make it worth saving, but not by giving you advice. And if telling people what they should do to fix their relationships worked, would any of us even need relationship advice? I don't think so. We wouldn't need help. That's not how it works. There's just so much more to it than that, right? So you have unique challenges in your marriage, and even the best relationship coach in the world knows only a little about your life. She can't really know what's best for you. Only you know that. So a good relationship coach sees you as the expert on your own life, which means she doesn't have any advice for you. She doesn't even know what you should do, so she can't tell you. Crazy, right? So what's the point? What good does a relationship coach even do? Well, she listens to you and she asks you questions, and And then she shares her experience, which can be shocking if you're not used to that, right? One of the coaches talks about how horrified she was during her first coaching session when the coach started talking about herself. She was like, "This is supposed to be about me." And of course, the coaching session was about her, about the student who became a coach, who now shares about herself too, and probably horrifies new coaching clients that way. Uh, but why is your relationship coach sharing about herself so valuable? Why is that even valuable? Well, that leads us to the second thing to look for in a relationship coach, which is that she has what you want. She has to have what you want, right? Some people take an academic approach to marriage, uh, but not here. All of us coaches learned everything in the trenches in real marriages. Our certified coaches are real women who were suffering and they overcame their challenges. And some of those challenges were very scary. He was insisting on a divorce, or he was abusing alcohol, or her, or the kids. He had already moved on with another woman. Terrifying stuff. If your relationship coach is going to be your guide for how to repair a struggling or broken marriage, she has to have faced challenges in her own marriage and come through the other side where there's peace and emotional safety and connection. She may not have faced the exact same challenges, but she's felt the same hopelessness, the same embarrassment, the same loneliness. And this is key, by the way. This is key. She has figured out how to escape from the quicksand that she felt stuck in and fix her family. She knows the way because she's traveled that road herself. She knows what works and what doesn't, not because she read about it in a textbook, but because she's lived it. Number 3, she's an expert on the 6 intimacy skills. So if you've listened to this podcast before, you probably saw this one coming. Your relationship coach has got to know the fundamentals, which are the 6 intimacy skills. And the intimacy skills, if you're not familiar, those are the secrets that I used to save my marriage. And then I taught my coaches and thousands of other students how to implement them to restore the intimacy and the fun. And that started a whole worldwide movement over 20 years ago. And your relationship coach has to be well versed in those, because otherwise it's like if your accountant never learned math. Right? That just, it wouldn't work. You want to look for the official seal of a certified Lord Doyle relationship coach. The best relationship coaches in the world have that official seal. Now, relationship coaching is something I wish for every woman who's ever felt lonely or hopeless or just bone weary from struggling in her marriage like I used to. I know it takes a lot of courage to get yourself that kind of support. And if that's you, I admire your courage. You know, the world needs more women like you who think that having a great marriage is important, because it is. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Crystal's husband was set on getting divorced, and he meant it because he moved out, which was heartbreaking. But even in her pain, Crystal decided to fight what she calls the good fight to save her marriage, and it worked. Today, her marriage is better than ever. She's going to share how she fixed her broken marriage so you can do it too. Crystal, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Thank you. I'm so excited and honored to be here. And wow, this is just amazing and kind of like a pinch myself type moment here. And um, yeah, it's all thanks to you and what everything that you have put out there for us women who are just wanting to save our marriage and make it better than it ever could have been in their minds. So I'm so honored and thankful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I totally hear that. And I agree. This is a celebration moment we're having right now because it's to celebrate huge accomplishment. And of course, we want to hear all the details, but man, there's just nothing like being able to stand here, be here on the podcast, being an inspiration to everybody else because even those really dark moments that you went through that we're going to hear about, that wasn't the end of the story.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right, but well, what was going on though in the beginning? Like what or take us back to the bad old days. What was happening in your marriage?
Yeah. So my husband and I, we've been together, well, now for 18 years, married for 13 now. And we've had our ups and downs throughout the years. And, I've always had a little bit of like, control issues and some, anger and everything, or I would just completely shut down until basically I just couldn't take anymore. And so, I mean, we've had those issues kind of from the get-go, but he's always been somebody that has made me want to be better. And, I owe a lot to him to kind of turning my life around when we first met. Um, but there was still so much that I needed to do for myself. And um, we have two kids, 8 and 5. And, after kids is, things kind of become about them and got to the point where we were a great team, um, great friendship, um, loved each other very, very much. But, it kind of became like this routine, and this just run of the mill type situation, and everything looked good on the surface, but it started to wear on him. He's a very easygoing guy. He's a very nice guy and doesn't know how to say no to me or anybody else. And so I would be controlling, everything was my way and he would just do it. And I always recognized that he was great for always helping out and doing this and doing that, but I didn't give him the praise as much as he should have. And I didn't make him feel, I guess, very safe sometimes to open up on how he felt about things or share his opinions or his choices. And um, the beginning of last year of 2022, he had left a job of 15 years. He was sought after by another company. Um, and it was an opportunity for him to kind of grow and in his career. And I had mixed feelings about it. We had grown, he had been there for so long. It was like a kind of like a second family and great place. And he grew so much in that position. But I wanted him to continue to grow in his career. And so he got that job in beginning of 2022. And, things kind of got a little bit different. Things got really difficult with our 8-year-old son, 6 at the time, actually. And I was having a hard time with who I was as a person, who I was as a mother. I just was feeling very overwhelmed. Um,
Hmm.
I was just really struggling. And so I started doing counseling on my own. And then one day, he said to me that, he wanted to have a serious conversation with me and that we don't get to do that very often. And he just wanted to talk. And I was like, okay. And he kind of prefaced it with, this article from a book, um, and it just showed up on his feed on his phone, just happened to show up. And I think it's called like, this is how you lose your marriage or something like that. And basically he
Oof.
was like, this wife left this husband over not like big things, but a series of small things through the years and kind of like tiny cuts and like a slow bleed out. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, we'll talk about that. And so in my mind, I'm going straight to thinking he thinks I want to leave him. So we have a talk later that night after the kids go to bed, and he got to talking about how um he was asking me how I felt about our marriage, and I couldn't really give him an answer. I was like, it's fine. Basically, I don't think I should change. And he's like, well, I think it's just okay. And, these little signals started going off in my head, like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And I just started to shut down. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay, whatever. Let's go on to the next topic of working in our backyard, of some, this big project we wanted to do in the backyard. And then, oh, let's also talk about this dog that I was thinking about getting for our family. And so, you know, here he is getting shut down again, something that was really serious to him. And so I started getting that feeling like, okay, I think I need to get us some help, not just me, but us. And so, like, I got to get, got on it to find a counselor for both of us. And actually, we ended up seeing my counselor, but it was kind of one of those things where I kind of, it was kind of too late for him. And
Oof.
I could tell one day we were driving, just him and and he went to go put I was driving and he went to go put his arm on my shoulder. And I kind of jumped because it did kind of scare me. I was like, what is that? But the look in his face, like, and the look in his eyes, like, it was like he was losing me. And I'm like, no, that's okay. I want you to put your arm on me or your hand on me. Um, it was kind of like that last reach out to me moment. And a few days pass, and we talked at another night when our kids went to bed, and it just came to it where he just broke down. And he doesn't break down often, and he did. And he's like, I'm done. I'm tapped out. I was like, in my head, I'm like, what? This guy, this man with these high morals, who it's so important to him, his family and his marriage, never wanting to see us get divorced because his parents divorced at a young age, and my parents aren't, even though they have their own sets of problems, but he loves to see that they're still together after so many years. Here's this man who has all of that, and he's done.
Oof.
And I was like, well, I know you love me, but I was like, are you in love with me? And he looked at me and he was like, barely.
Oof.
And I was like,
Ooh.
okay. And I asked him to please not do this, and he's like, I just can't.
Oh.
So another night or two later, after our kids went to bed, we got to talking again, and I don't know what it was. I just felt this. I just felt in me that I had to ask him, and I never felt like I needed to ask him this. And I even told him, I was like, I would never think to ask you this because I know you, but I was like, I have to. Is there someone else? And he said, yes.
Oh. Oh.
And I was at a loss for words. I don't even remember if I cried or not. I think I was just in shock. And he was very honest about it. And he was like, nothing's happened, but there is feelings, and I'm trying to navigate through them. He's like, it was kind of looked up on it. referred to as like an emotional affair. And I knew who it was because I had seen her name before a few times on his text, and he had talked about her a little bit here and there. So I just had a feeling it was her, and it was her. I had never met her before. He said that she was going through the same thing with her husband,
Mm.
and he didn't hold anything back. And because he's not trying to hide anything. It's not like he's trying to throw it at my face. I've never felt that way. I could tell the hurt in him. Um,
Mm.
and he said that just things, they were just talking a lot, sharing a lot. She was sharing a lot about her husband and everything. And she came into him after work one day, after everyone had left, and she had said to him, I think I'm getting a crush on you.
Oh.
And he was like, he said to her, he's like, oh, is that what this is? I was like, okay.
Oh.
And now I want it to be known. I believed every word he said, and I still believe it to this day because I know him. And I know that if nothing, I know that if nothing was said to him about feelings towards him, then he wouldn't have acted on it. Um,
Mm.
but he also can't ignore the pain that he's feeling and then the emotional support that he was getting that he needed that he wasn't getting from me. And I recognized it right away. I, and so he said that he thought he might love her, but he didn't know in what way. And he was trying to navigate that. He was trying to figure it out. And I was like, okay.
Oof.
And so,
Devastating.
yeah, and I didn't get angry at him. I, I mean, I was very upset, but
Yeah.
I didn't. And so we had a birthday party, I think that coming weekend. Yeah, that weekend, for her son that we had already been invited to. And I was like, I don't know if it's a good idea for us to
Ugh.
go. He was like, he's like, well, I can't. I was like, I don't know how I feel about the kids going. And he's like, well, I can't go without the kids. And I'm like, he's like, so if you don't think we should go. And I was like, fine, let's go.
Really?
And so we go. I wanted to I wanted to see what this was all about. I wanted him to know that I cared, that he was hurting, and that all of this is what led to this whole situation in the first place. So we go, and this is my first time meeting her in person, and she comes up towards us, and she reaches out and gives him a hug right in front of me.
Oof.
And I
Oh.
was just like, what? And she knew that I knew. I don't think her husband knew what was going on completely between them. They hadn't split up quite yet, but it was in the works. Anyways, that was really hard, but I
Yeah.
toughed it out.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
so,
you didn't get angry about
I mean, I
that.
wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't like, cursing him out or anything like that. I tried to go the route of being understanding and just knowing that this isn't who he is. And um, I had to do something. And for him, it was kind of too little too late. Um, I couldn't go from 0 to 100 just like that. That was something that he had mentioned to my mom. And it's like, better late than never. But, uh, anyways, I got it into my head to plead, not just with him, but I asked him, I was like, would she be willing to meet with me, to talk with me, just to talk? I promise nothing will happen. I was like, you know me, I wouldn't do anything. And he was like, okay. So we asked her and she said yes. Um, and so her and I met together at a little cafe type place, and
Ooh.
we talked for about a little over an hour. And I I told her how I felt disrespected, and she says she understands how I could feel that way. And it's like, I just basically pleaded, and I wanted my marriage, and I knew what I did on my part. And, we're both not perfect, and I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my husband. And, we leave. I get home. She gets home. And not even an hour later from leaving that place, she texts him to meet up to see if he would meet up with her later in the evening to talk. And so he
Oh
asked
my
me,
gosh.
and I was like, oh, okay.
You,
I'm
you,
just like sitting there thinking, wow.
this did
um,
not work at all. Like,
yeah. And I'm just
you,
like, I just got home, and her husband knew about us meeting actually, and he had found me on social media, and he actually messaged me, and he was like, do you know what's going on? Do you think her and your husband are going to get together? I'm devastated. She won't talk to me. She won't try to get go into counseling and talk or whatever. And I'm like, I told him, I was like, I can't answer that for you. You're going to have to ask her. But I'm devastated too. And so, I mean,
mm,
we were both really hurting. And
mm,
anyways,
ouch.
so yeah,
So you went into that conversation with her hoping you could kind of persuade her to like leave your family alone. Is
yeah,
that right?
yeah, yeah.
And it didn't even, not even for an hour, she couldn't leave your husband alone.
No, I mean, and she wasn't mean about it. She was very kind and everything. And,
Oof.
she was just she was a
Oof.
hurting person too. And so it's like, maybe I can try to meet with her on this. Um, but it just didn't work out that way. And so, things continued, and he was still at home, but he had brought up the word divorce to our son's counselor.
Oh,
Um, when we were both there talking to her while our son was, in the other room, you know, and I was just like, I don't want this, and this is what's happening. And he just basically said that, he was done and in the process of divorce. And I'm like, oh my God.
oh,
I started looking for a place to live, and um but he was very cooperative, or not cooperative, but he was very willing to meet with my counselor, because she does marriage counseling as well. And so he was doing that with me. And those went okay. Sometimes they wouldn't be so great, sometimes they'd be fine. But he had mentioned to her, he's like, once my mind is made up, it's done.
oh,
And she is somebody that I would, this other woman, I would be interested in dating. And I'm just hurt. And
oh
I
gosh. Yes.
and so he moved out July of last year. He didn't move far. He wanted, and like he got an apartment that I had picked out because I wanted him to be close for the kids and for me. And it wasn't his top choice. But the price point was all right, and it was close. And so he did it for the kids and for me. And so, um, not the greatest place, but I mean, it was fine. But I just kept doing my therapy. I mean, I was just devastated that first month after him telling me about wanting to leave and everything. I lost a lot of weight really fast in a month.
Mm.
I couldn't bring myself to eat. I was not sleeping. Um, I
Wow.
mean, I was heartbroken. My Everybody in our family, mine and his family, our friends, our coworkers, like they were shocked. They were
Oh,
shocked.
so everybody knows about it at this point. There.
Yeah, because I'm a very open person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, even, yeah, like I said, even his family was just in complete and utter shock and just devastated. It's like, our whole ecosystem had been shattered. Um, and
Yeah.
so,
See,
it's like, okay, I guess I gotta,
yeah. So you're at this point, I mean, you're in so much pain. Obviously, you're losing a bunch of weight. And he's getting this apartment, but I mean, was any part of you like, yeah, and good riddance? Like, I mean,
I mean, there was parts of me that was kind of like that, but I it wasn't something that I really ever said out loud or anything like that. I mean, there'd be times, but he knew that that's not what I wanted. And I actually ended up starting to go to church after all of this. Mind you, I not a wasn't a very really big religious person. I mean, I believed, but I didn't like talking about it. It was kind of weird thing. Um, I had my own relationship with faith and all of that. And so, but I was like, I got to do something. And I just remember when I first started going, I was terrified. I was crying all the time
yeah,
at
yeah.
service. Um, but I started it out as going to save my marriage. Um, uh, and he wanted me to go to church. He wanted to go to church with the kids. He's always been really, into reading the Bible, or listening to the Bible on his phone every morning and all of that. But he was very respectful of my feelings about it. But I didn't want to go. And I told him I didn't really want the kids going. So yeah, going to church was something to kind of save that. And then over time, it ended up being something that really was something that I needed. I started praying a lot. And just finding really great friends there, family that knew my situation and continued to pray for him and didn't talk down on him. They didn't even know really who he was. He had gone there a few times and participated in some stuff for the kids. Um, but yeah, they never talked bad. They just continued to pray for me and him and our family. Anyways, so I just kept kind of going this road and trying to better myself. All the while, he hadn't started dating her yet. He told me that he would let me know if he started dating someone, and he wanted me to date. I
Oh,
had met a guy that, I that was interested and, tried to see how that went, and he was asked me about this guy, and I was like, nah. He's like, oh well, why not? You should, and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, but he's not you. I mean, I didn't say that, but it's like I don't. It's just not. He's a nice guy. He's like maybe a friend, but I can't see myself. But it was like he wanted me to move on. He didn't want me to hurt.
mm,
Um, he wanted to make sure that I was taken care of enough to the point where he was okay with holding off on signing divorce papers, so it would give me time, because I was like, I can't do it, right? I can't just jump into divorce after all of these years. I just can't do it. And he was like, okay, well then we'll hold off on it for now until time feels right for you. I'm like, okay. But if it was up to him, it would have happened a long time ago.
wow.
Um, but he wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He wanted me to have the house. He wanted me to be able to stay in the house with the kids. He wanted to help support me. He didn't want me to feel like I was being abandoned. So, despite what other people were saying about, him not loving me, if he did, he wouldn't have done this. And it's like, no, he does. He does. He
Oh,
loves me very much, and we are best friends.
mm,
Um, but for
wow.
him, that's pretty much all we were. Was This is him saying this at the beginning. I think we've been together for as long as we were because we are such best friends. And it's like, wow, okay.
Mm,
But I just kept doing what I was doing, and things were kind of up and down. Let's say mostly up. I would get upset about things here and there, primarily when it came to her. She had asked to meet, she was in town with her son for a birthday party and asked him, while he had the kids on his time, if they wanted to meet up at the park.
Mm.
Well, he told me about it later. Actually, my son told me about it when they came home.
Oh, no.
And I was like, what? He was like, oh, yeah, I was going to tell you. I was like, okay, after
Oh,
the fact. And I was like, we will talk about this later. And after our kids were gone, went to bed or whatever, I was like, please don't do that again. I was like, how would you feel if I had our kids around somebody that I was looking at dating or whatever? He was like, I would feel the same way. He didn't really
oh,
understand it at first, but I just was like, I was like, she should have known better. She's a mom. She's is or was a wife. um, she made her divorce happen pretty quick. Hers was
mm,
pretty right away.
mm.
But I was like, she knows, she should understand. I'm not okay with that. And I really don't think that the kids should be around her for a while. And so he's like, okay, fine. So, anyways, our daughter's birthday comes around in September of last year, or sorry, not my daughter, my son. And we had a great time. We went out to dinner together, um, the four of us, and then we went back to his apartment and we were, just hanging out. And then we got to talking about the kids' schedule for the rest of the year. And I kind of got caught off guard with just, the whole scheduling thing. And I felt like I was being ambushed and I got pretty upset. And he was getting pretty upset. And instead of me thinking, he just really wants to spend time with his kids, it's nothing to do with you, I automatically went to, he's trying to take my kids from me and he doesn't want to be with me. And so we had a little bit of an altercation. My mom came and got our kids because unfortunately they were there. Um, and
That's
then
heartbreaking.
after my mom got there, we stepped outside and I asked him, I was like, have you been intimate with her? And, when he went to go tell me, he looked at me and I could just see the hurt in his eyes and I could see him tearing up. And he said, yes.
Oh,
And I
no.
was like, okay, this is probably over. So she's like, what do I do? So the very next day, I went out on my own on a hike and I just prayed the whole time while I was waiting to get to my destination, um, to this waterfall. And I just, it's like I gave myself like a spiritual bath. I was like, I need to be cleansed of this situation, of what happened yesterday. I just need to know your presence is here with me, God. And, and it was just so, I felt like, I just felt like I was being forgiven and that I can come back from this. I will be okay. I have the support. I have the love. I have even my husband, even though he is hurting me, I have his love and his support. And I have my kids. And I just really started being there for myself
Mm.
and just still hoping and praying. And I went zip lining, I went skydiving, I went
Wow.
like and then like the very next week I got my very first tattoo. And like I think somebody like a few weeks ago was on the podcast saying like she doesn't know if it was because of all the pain she went through. Like it was kind of like she was numb to everything else. And it's kind of like I can take all this emotional and mental pain. Physical pain is nothing. And so like I was just so ready. I was so ready to jump out of the plane. I felt like such a peace before, during, and after. of like this let go of this just I'm
Surrender.
strong, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then getting a tattoo is like, sharing my story while my tattoo artist, who's like an old acquaintance, we're like catching up, talking about our life stories. And it was like very cathartic. It was very therapeutic. And then I told my husband, I was like, I really want to get out of here. I want to do something for myself. I just need to go. And he was like, okay. I was like, I want to go to Ireland. And he was supportive. And he even like let me use our money for it. And I went at, after Thanksgiving last year on my own. I had never done something like that before, but it was just I just felt I just felt like I was becoming empowered in myself and loving myself, taking care of myself, doing all of these things. And when I came back, things between us were just going so good.
Hmm.
I knew he was still seeing her, but like as the holidays were approaching, we were spending more time together with the kids. And I was like, you know what? That's fine with me. Even if he's still seeing her, he's with us more, you know? He wanted to be with us for Christmas. He still took holiday pictures with us. Took the kids to see Santa, went and got our tree together. He even stayed Christmas Eve, and actually the night before that because we had a big snowstorm, so he kind of got stuck with us for 2 nights. I'm like, oh, that's a sign. But we had a great time. Like, I mean, and he would tell me that he was so thankful and he really appreciated me and my resilience and my grace, and that he was
Oh,
having a great time, even with he was having a great time with me. Um, and I
wow.
was just like, I was okay. I was like, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Wow.
And so Christmas came and we spent the morning together, and then we went to my parents' house, and before we got to eating and praying, I I was like, I'm going to be bold. I had practiced singing a Christmas song, and so I sung in front of our whole family, and I could just see his face just lighting up at me of doing something like that I would never have done before because I'm
Wow.
very self-conscious about myself. Um,
So
kind
this
of
is
shy, but also
vulnerable.
very out there. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was being vulnerable. And I was just like, this is so great. He's here and I can feel the love between us, even if it's different. And we went on my parents' back patio, just him and and I asked him to dance with me, and he did, and got to talking, and I told him how sorry I was and how I felt like he saved me when I was younger from a path that probably would have been very self-destructive. But that there was only so much that he could do for me. You know, it takes believing in God, and then it also takes me believing in myself and loving myself. I can't love anybody the way that they should if I can't love myself. And he was just, and I told him, I was like, even if I'm alone for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. And that he would always be my greatest love. And, he was just tearing up, and he thanked me for being vulnerable. And he just looked at me as we were holding each other. He was like, I'm sorry for everything and I love you, but I'm just sorry I can't give you what you want. And so that, I mean, that hurt, but
Yeah.
again, I was okay with it. I had faith still. And he left that night, thanked me again. He said he had another holiday get together to get to, and I knew where he was going,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, you know what? I'm fine. It's all right. It's all right. And like literally right after he left, like a few minutes later, he texted me. He was like, thank you for talking to me, Crystal. And I just want you to know that Planets Bend Between Us just played, which was our main wedding song. And I was just like, wow, like that's a sign. That's a sign. Like, how does that happen? Like, and it's not a very popular song, and it's an older song. And I'm just like, oh my God, is he telling me something? Is he like, you know? And so
Yeah.
like, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, um,
That's how I take it. For sure.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And everything's going so good. Like, okay, don't assume anything, don't rush anything. Okay. Um, and then I had a coworker after the holidays tell me, or right after Christmas, tell me, oh, you should try marriage coaching. She's like, it saved my friend's, marriage. They had the same thing happen. I was like, okay. So I got vulnerable. I emailed him and asked him about doing that. And I was like, there's so much more to gain than there is to lose. And, I want to leave a legacy with our kids. Would you consider doing it? And he respectfully declined. And I
Oh.
cried for a couple minutes,
Oh yeah.
but then I was okay. I was okay. And then our daughter's birthday was right after the new year, and we spent the morning together. He had invited me to come have breakfast with him because I had brought donuts over for our daughter. And he asked me if I wanted to have breakfast, and we had a great breakfast. Our daughter, I tell you, her faith is amazing. She has been praying ever since I started having us go to church. She had been praying every time that she had a chance to have mommy and daddy come back
Oh.
together.
Oh my gosh.
And that was her birthday wish when she blew out her candles, is for us to get back together. And
Oh.
you know,
Well,
anyway, he spent the afternoon with them, and then we had planned to have dinner together, um, out at a restaurant, and we had a great time there. We get ready to leave, and we get into his car to come back to my house because we drove together. And my daughter picks up this doll, and my son is like, "Oh, mom, that's from the other woman."
ugh.
And I'm like, "Oh." And I look at my husband, and he's like, "Yes, it is," to my son. And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Can we talk about that when we get back to the house?" And I was like, "It's okay. Everything will be fine." He's like, "Yeah, sure." And we get home, and I just was telling him how I felt about it, how I felt hurt, um, because we hadn't talked about it yet, about her being around the kids or anything. We were going to wait until after the holidays and after our daughter's birthday party. Um, then we were going to talk about it and lay down some, expectations and stuff on that. And we didn't get to do that, obviously. And I told him how I just felt hurt. I was like, I just want her to understand where I'm coming from as a mother, as a wife, as a woman. And at first he seemed fine with it. And then I could tell he was getting kind of standoffish. And I just, I could tell he was starting to shut down, and I was feeling like I wasn't being heard. He said
Mm.
he had feelings on the whole situation as well. I was like, of course you have feelings. But I was like, but I'm the one that's being hurt. I'm the one that was left. And
Mm.
then it just went downhill from there. I asked him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. He wanted to make sure the kids were fine. And long story short on that, I got into quite a bit of trouble that night. Um, he thought he thought I needed help. Um,
Oh.
well, he knew I needed help. And so he called an ambulance for me.
Oh.
I
Oh.
told him I was okay. But it was already too late. There was an ambulance on the way to come and help me. And I just remember everything went into a blur. It was like this blur of color. I just I lost my hope, I guess, and my faith. I let fear take over. I put fear over my faith instead of putting faith over fear. And I just I just remember seeing the look in his eyes, the fear in his eyes, and the fear in his voice. That's all I can really remember. And I came to. He just wanted to make sure I was okay. And so, help comes, but also so do police. And
Oh,
um, they put two and two together. Um, and basically um, I got in trouble. He did everything that he could. Neither one of us knew what would happen, and he pleaded with them. Like I saw it all afterwards, on our door camera. He tried to do anything to get me from getting in trouble. He's like, she's never been in trouble before. Is there anything? He's like, I don't want anything he's like, I'm not wanting to put anything against her. And they're like, it's out of our hands. And
oh,
that was the worst 24 hours of my life. Well, no, I take that back. The worst was my husband telling me that he was done. But that was right behind it. And all I could sit there and think was, while I was, you know, where I was, um, I would I would sit in that place for a whole nother 24 hours, 1,000 times over, to just take that pain away from him and my family.
mm,
I was so mad at myself. Um, and something that was said to me that took a little bit of a little bit of time to sink in was, one incident doesn't change all of the work that I had put into myself, and it only makes me stronger, and that I will learn from it. And it
mm.
took some time. It took like a good couple of weeks. I was in a depression, but I was like, you know what? Look what I've come from since last year. I mean, it could have gone a totally different way. And yes, I let this one thing get to me. I let this one person make me feel so threatened, and I let that take over me. I let my emotions take over.
You're very
Um,
scared.
yeah.
Really terrifying. Yeah.
So about a month later, I went into my son's therapist, um, to give her an update, and also we had put him back in therapy, just because of everything going on. And I talked to her separately, and she she asked me, she's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I want my husband to come back home. I don't want him to be with her, blah blah blah." She's like, "You can't control her or him. What do you want?" And I couldn't really answer her. I was like, "What do I say? I mean, isn't it obvious?" And she's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I want my marriage." She's like,
Mm.
"Okay." And so she told me about a book, and it was called The Empowered Wife. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a wife much longer. She was like, that doesn't matter. She was like, this will help you learn these skills to be a better person, to be a better woman, to be a better person, a better friend, and maybe even a better wife. And I was like, okay. Um, so I was like, well, what do I have to lose? So I got it. And I just at first, I was like, I read the part of, the man being the head of the house, and that, I should just put the duct tape on and just, nod my head and be like, whatever you think. And I'm like, I don't want to be a submissive
No,
housewife. What is this?
no. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yuck.
But I was like, you know what? Just keep reading. I mean, come on. Just do it. And so when I got to the part in the book where it said, the man is the head of the household, the woman is the neck. We set the tone. And I was like, okay. So I started doing that. Um, you know, and I had time to practice these skills before I saw my husband again. We did not see each other for almost 3 months.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
or no communication at all. And it was hard.
No,
It was
really.
really hard. We'd never had that happen before, where we didn't talk to each other at least one day. And so then the time came and he wanted to be able to see me sooner because he thought it would be better for the kids, it would be better for our families. And he also wanted to get a move on with getting the divorce. And I was
Oh,
like, I told my mom, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't want them to lift it sooner. She was like, you're ready. She's like, you have already done so much over the last year than many people can do in their whole lifetime. In these last few months with this, learning these new skills along with what you already learned, you're doing it. You can do it. And I was like, okay, all right. Because I could see the change. I mean, I was already seeing the change before the new year, but I was really seeing it after I was learning the skills. Things at work changed. Things in my personal life changed. Like it just all of these doors continued to open. And then I also, in all of this, surrendered it to God. Whatever happens, happens. I don't want to lose my marriage, but I'm leaving it up to you. And all of this together just started this shift. So we finally saw each other at the end of March of this year, and we had a state of the union with my parents, his sister. Um, my dad spoke quite a bit, and then afterwards, my husband had said, I hope that we can have a friendship one day, um, and some other stuff. And then he said, I want papers signed by the end of June. And I just listened. I was like, okay, here's the duct tape,
yeah.
duct tape,
Yeah. Smart.
and just respect what he has to say. And so when he said that, I was like, I understand what you're saying. I hear you, and I respect you, and I know that you have our family's best interests at heart, including mine.
Wow.
But I don't
Wow.
want this. But I don't want this. And I don't think he didn't have much to say. He just kind of sighed and just like, and that was that. And as he was getting ready to leave, we were all getting ready to leave, and we actually had a good like interaction. Um, he was kind of making a joke, and then I told him how sorry I was for the night on our daughter's birthday, and
Mm.
he was like, we've always had an understanding of each other, and we've always been very honest with each other. He's like, sometimes a little too honest, but and he just kind of started to tear up, and I was like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
Gave each other a hug, and just from there, things just kind of started to take a turn. Before Mother's Day, we were hanging out with the kids one day, and some flirtation was starting to happen. More texting was happening, and he was kind of going out of his way to see about me coming over to have dinner at his place with the kids and asking me to go to yoga with just him and I. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
And he was staying over late watching, a show or something with me after the kids gone to bed. And it's like, what's going on? I'm like, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. These skills are working, and just don't have any expectations. Just
Oh,
be you, just be free, just be open. And one day he sat down and talked with me that after our incident in January, that things between the other woman and him had kind of fizzled out. and that he
Oh,
was open to seeing what would happen between us, whether that be a friendship, a really good friendship, or not, or something more. I was like, okay.
whoa,
And
whoa.
so he was very honest about his feelings about how he wasn't on the same page with of feelings that way as I was. Um, but we had became intimate, and he did tell me though that he was
Exciting.
not ready for a relationship. He was kind of burnt out on him, and I respected that. And I was like, you know what? He's hanging out with me.
Yeah, yeah. You're choosing your focus very wisely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so not long after that, he was talking about like maybe moving back home and being like cohabitants or whatever. Basically
Wow.
living together, but not necessarily being in a relationship and not having any expectations. And I'm like, okay. He quit his job,
Oh,
which I was like, oh gosh, yes, yes, this is like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? This is working. Like, I got to keep doing this. This is working. He's leaving the job. He got a new job right away that's closer to home and just gets him out of that field that he was in. Um, Something new to challenge him. He moved home and things just continued to progress. We were building a new foundation. We were building a stronger foundation than we ever had. And he was waiting for the shoe to drop. He was a little guarded. Um, but he continued to praise me for all the work that I've done and how strong I was and that how grateful he was. I mean, like I'm sitting there thinking, I really don't deserve this praise. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I will take it. I
oh,
will receive
yeah.
graciously. I
You
will
received
receive. I
graciously. Yes.
did, yes. Like
Yes.
just everything. Like the the person that I was who was so indecisive and so low on her self-esteem to the point where I would throw out in the past, divorce to him. Not me saying that I'm going to divorce him, but just divorce me. I would tell him, just divorce me.
Oh,
And I always thought like if somebody was to leave the relationship, it would be me. And that's how like low I thought of myself, you know?
interesting. So you
Yeah.
kind of had like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, divorce me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you're going to get what you're asking for if you're not
Yeah. Oh,
careful.
wow. Wow.
So it took a lot of like rewiring my brain and my thought process, you know?
Sure.
And on our anniversary in September, no big fuss. We went out to lunch. He got concert tickets for a band that we've seen a couple of times and that really has a lot of significance to our lives together. He got us tickets to that. And then he also asked for his ring back. And I was just like, and I was hoping it would happen sometime soon, but I did not rush it. People would ask, are you guys back together? He's moved back in. Are you guys back together? I was like, we're working on it. I didn't put a label on it. I was like, we're working on it. And things are doing really great.
Oh,
And so now it's like, I have it. I have everything that I manifested, everything that I, learned from your book, from just having faith. Like this whole time, there was something inside of me that said, don't give up. No matter how much it hurts, don't give up. No matter what mistakes you made, even if they're huge, don't give up.
oh, oh.
And that's what I needed. I needed that last little nugget. And I'm forever grateful to my son's counselor who led me to your book. I mean, I had joined the Ridiculously Happy Wives Club, um, got into got the private coaching, and I mean, it's just, and he knows about it. I've explained it all to him. He was the first person I told about this podcast, and he was so excited for me. He was so happy, and he's my biggest cheerleader on this. And we got to talking a few weeks ago when we went out to breakfast together, just him and and I was telling him like one of the goals that I had wrote down for Bible college that I started going to in September as well
Oh,
was the last thing I wrote was like, and I don't know if I would do it or not, but maybe become a relationship coach. And he's like, you should do it. There's
oh,
so many women out there that need it. He's like, and you would be great at it. And
that's him.
so,
That's him acknowledging all the
exactly.
transformation. That's him
Hmm.
saying, I
Yep.
see what you did, Crystal. It's
Hmm.
amazing.
Hmm.
You'd be great at showing other women how to do it too.
Well, and
Uh,
like so many of these women that I've listened to, I mean, and even outside of this, I've met so many incredible people, primarily women, with their stories. But hearing bits and pieces of my story in other women, like I needed that. I mean, it inspired me to keep going. And I want to be that for somebody else, even if it's just one person. Um, I mean, and the first person that really started praying with me when I first started going to church, she was in the same situation. And she said, if you would have asked me 2 years if my husband and I would be here together, I would have laughed in your face because she was done. She was 100% out. It was bad. And they are they are great. They are better than ever. And that was a huge thing for me. Just all of this. It's been so uplifting. And you have to listen to the people that are in your corner and um ignore the people who understandably are like, oh, well, he hurt you. You shouldn't go back. Like, understandably, they're looking out for you. But I am
Want to
the expert in
protect you.
my own life.
Yeah.
I can control what's on my side of the street. I can't control his, but when I work on myself, I can see it. It makes others around me want to be better and vice versa. And that includes my husband. So
Wow.
every day we are showing up, and I'm just so grateful for it. I mean, this is a legacy that I'm leaving for our kids.
Oh, yeah.
I,
Your daughter's wish, her wish on her birthday.
yeah, both of them. Like, I mean, just it's amazing. I'm just incredibly blessed, and I'm just so thankful for so many different people. And I'm thankful that I was given the strength from so many different things, from faith, from other people, just everything, like to continue to keep fighting the good fight for my marriage, for myself, you know.
Amazing, Crystal. Gosh, congratulations. You're inspiring a lot of people right now. A lot of women are listening and saying, "Oh my gosh, if there's hope for Crystal's marriage, with the mistakes or the heartbreak,
Hmm.
how hopeless it seemed at times, then maybe there's hope for me too."
No,
What is it? How would you describe your marriage now? What's it like?
I would describe it as it just feels more lighthearted. I feel like I mean, there's so much vulnerability. There's so much more understanding. There's always been humor, but I mean, even more so. I just feel like he looks at me just I just feel so beautiful when he looks at me. I mean, and not that
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure he looks at me the same way, just well, probably looks at me even more now as being beautiful because I feel myself as strong and beautiful. Um, but he just makes me feel important. He makes me feel like I'm number one in his life after God, of course. And um we're just there. I mean, I get texts from him throughout the day, just random texts on how lucky he is, how much he loves me, and how much he can't wait to see me when I get home. And, you know, um,
Same man, same guy that was like, I want a divorce. I want the paper signed by.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
So it just sounds like a miracle. It really sounds like a miracle.
Mhm,
What's your best tip for somebody who is where you were, where he's moved out and there's somebody else and he wants a divorce and she wants to get those texts now from him throughout the day and feel like
mhm,
he looks at her and she feels beautiful, like,
mhm,
and that she feels like the most important person in his life.
yeah.
What's your best tip?
You have to have faith. You have to have faith. You have to feel it in your heart that you want your marriage. And then you also need to learn to love yourself, to take care of yourself. Because, like I said, how can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? And love is also a choice.
Mhm.
Not every day is going to be roses and rainbows. You have to make that conscious choice that you're going to show up. You're going to love your partner, your spouse. Um, you set the tone.
Mm.
Like I have that written in my car. So I remember when I come home every day from work or whatever, I see it.
You're gonna set the
Set the
tone.
tone, make it positive. Yeah, and I mean the six skills. I mean, just live by those. I mean, it's really not that hard. I mean, sometimes it can be a challenge. I had to use some duct tape last night. And actually I was being funny about it. I told my husband, "Hold on." And I go out to the garage and I go and get the duct tape and I just put it on. He just starts laughing. Um, I don't even remember what it was he was saying to me. Oh, we were talking about like we need to get the kids to bed and it's such and such time. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to still have to finish decorating the tree. And he's like, yeah, but I'm like, okay, hold on. I need to
Very
stop
girl of
making it.
fun and light, right? Very
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and I don't know, it's just been amazing learning all of these skills. And I'm just so grateful for them. And it's a game changer. It really is. I mean, I can't tell people about this book enough. You know, even if it's not for your marriage, it's great for just relationships in general. And, it's definitely helped me. And I feel like if I can get through everything that I've gone through, um, then I know other people can too. Because
Right.
I really felt like, oh, there's no way. But obviously, deep down, I knew that
There was a way
if there's the
somehow.
littlest bit of light, I I I was like that tiny bit of light, I can work off that.
Yeah, right.
Even though the enemy or whoever wants to tell me otherwise, it's a good thing I'm very stubborn.
Right? That helps. I think that, yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
That's cute. You were very determined and persistent. You went through a lot. So, what do you think you would say to yourself if you could talk to yourself from before, knowing what you know now?
Mm-hmm. Just be more vulnerable, be open minded, and just really take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Take care of yourself
Hmm.
because you're no good to anybody else if you don't.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Mhm.
Well, you did. You zip lined and you jumped out of a plane. I mean, you've done a lot of self-care things. You got that tattoo, and there's a lot of self-care that's happening.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I love that. And it's just amazing. I do want to definitely give you my award here, Crystal, because you deserve this.
Oh,
Look at you
yay.
saved your family. You gave your
Yeah.
children both their biggest wish, their birthday wishes, right?
Hmm.
To have mom and
Hmm.
dad together again.
Hmm.
And just created love where there was going to be separateness and heartbreak. So I just consider that like the biggest accomplishment, the one I admire the most in the whole world. And so I would like to present you with this award as the best
Thank
wife.
you. Thanks. Awesome.
You're welcome. And
Oh,
yeah, you've definitely you've shared so vulnerably, and it's so inspiring, so amazing to hear the firsthand account of how this can absolutely be done. You did it, and so that gives hope for all the rest of us. And I thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I hope it's been an inspiration for other women out there, and I you know, hope to get on the train of being able to say that, hey, I'm a relationship coach. Like that's the next step because
Awesome.
there's so many women out there who really need it. I mean, it's just easy to walk away these days, and that's just not the answer.
Now, there's this
No.
much better way. You've
Mhm. Mhm.
been there yourself, so you know how to get there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
so great. Love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all your inspiration and everything that you put out there. I think a lot of recognition needs to go to you and all the other women there, and it's
Thank you.
yeah, it's a blessing.
Thank you so much. According to a study at Harvard, and this was horrifying to hear, if you know a couple who's getting divorced, you are 75% more likely to get divorced too. Woo! It matters who you listen to, which is why over 7,000 women like you who think that having a great marriage is important have joined our free Adored Wife group. The Adored Wife group is a launch pad where you can meet our certified coaches and discover the best next steps for making your marriage last and thrive. It's 100% free to join. Just go to lauradoyle.org/group right now. This is a private group and it's not for everybody, but if you are a wife or girlfriend who thinks that having a great marriage is important too, we'd all really like to meet you. So go to lauradoyle.org/group right now to join us free. That's lauradoyle.org/group. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week's podcast is about how mistakes were made. Relationship coaches confess. This is a collection of vulnerable, embarrassing, true stories that you won't want to miss. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that our neighborhood Christmas light contest is tonight, and I'm pretty sure we're going to win an Oscar or maybe an Emmy or probably both.